Look, I have seen a lot of stupid things in my 300 cycles of existence. I have watched Voltharian politicians promise tax reforms. I have seen Krennic's traders try to sell ice to frost dwellers. I have even witnessed my own broodmate attempt to microwave a plasma core, but nothing, and I mean absolutely nothing, prepared me for what I saw in the Grand Colosseum of Thykar Prime. That rotation. The arena was packed. And when I say packed, I mean you could not fit another living being in there if you tried with a molecular compressor. 60,000 spectators from 40 different species, all crammed into tiered seating that spiraled up toward the atmospheric shield. The air was thick with the smell of overpriced nutrient paste, recycled oxygen, and the distinct musk of anticipation. You know that smell? That electric tension that makes your secondary gills flare? Yeah, that one. The Grand Colosseum was not just any fighting pit, mind you. This was the premier combat arena in the entire Galactic Coalition. Champions were made here. Legends were born here. Fortunes changed hands faster than you could say medical insurance voice. The fighting floor itself was a masterpiece of engineering. A 60-meter circle of reinforced durasteel with force barriers humming at the edges. Above it, holographic displays flickered with fighter statistics, betting odds, and live anatomical readouts for those who enjoyed watching internal organs work overtime. Now, here is the thing about gladiatorial combat in civilized space. It was legal, regulated, and utterly brutal. Fighters signed contracts. Medical teams stood by. Death was rare, but career-ending injuries, those were Tuesday. The crowds loved it. The fighters loved it. The promoters loved the revenue streams. Everyone won, except maybe the fighters who lost. But that is beside the point. Humans had been participating in arena combat for about 20 cycles now, ever since they joined the Coalition. And let me tell you, the general consensus among seasoned fight fans was that humans were adorable, plucky, and hopelessly outmatched. They were the underdogs that made for good opening acts before the real champions came out. Light entertainment, crowd warm-up, betting practice for amateurs. We had no idea, none whatsoever. The announcer's voice boomed through the arena's acoustic amplifiers, making my auditory membranes vibrate uncomfortably. Ladies, gentlemen, and honored non-binary entities, welcome to tonight's main event. The crowd went absolutely feral. I am talking tentacles waving, mandibles clicking, sonic screams that probably violated 3 different noise ordinances. My seatmate, a Brolthian merchant who smelled like fermented kelp, nearly knocked over my overpriced beverage in his excitement. Introducing first from the 3rd planet of the Sol system, weighing in at 73 kilograms, standing 1.7 meters tall, the human they call the Hurricane, Maya Tora. The eastern gate hissed open and out walked this person. This tiny, fragile-looking person. She had dark hair pulled back in a tight braid, brown skin glistening under the arena lights, and muscles that sure were defined for a human, but looked like decorative cording compared to proper warrior species. She wore the standard arena gear, reinforced shorts, a chest guard that seemed laughably thin, and hand wraps that went up to her elbows. Her face was set in concentration, jaw clenched, eyes scanning the arena like she was calculating something. The crowd's reaction was mixed, some cheering mostly from the human section, which, let me tell you, was not a large section. Plenty of polite applause, and more than a few chuckles. The Brolthian next to me actually laughed out loud. She looks like she would break if I sneezed on her, he wheezed. Then the western gate opened, and the temperature in the arena seemed to drop 5 degrees. And her opponent, the reigning champion of the heavyweight division, with 47 consecutive victories, no defeats, standing 3.2 meters tall, weighing in at 412 kilograms, Krelovok the Unbreakable. Now this was a fighter. Krelovok was a Thraxian, one of those species that evolution clearly designed with violence in mind. He had 4 arms, each one corded with muscle that looked like steel cables wrapped in gray, scale-like skin. His torso was a wall of armor plating, natural bone ridges that could deflect most conventional weapons. 2 eyes, black as space itself, sat above a jaw that could probably bite through a support beam. When he walked, the durasteel floor actually resonated with each footfall. The crowd lost its collective mind. This was what they came to see. This was a real fighter. I pulled up my datapad to check the betting odds. Krelovok was favored at 50 to 1. 50 to 1. Maya Torres had 3% chance of victory according to the algorithmic predictions. The smart money. The really smart money. Was not even betting on whether she would lose but on which round she would go down in. I glanced at the human section. They were standing, chanting her name, waving Earth flags. Loyal. I had to give them that. Loyal and completely delusional. This was going to be a massacre and everyone knew it. So let me give you some context here, because you need to understand just how ridiculous this matchup was. Humans, bless their squishy little hearts, were not built for combat. Not real combat anyway. They had no natural armor plating, no venom glands, no razor-sharp claw, no acidic saliva, nothing. Their bones were made of calcium phosphate, which sounds impressive until you realize that is basically fancy chalk. Their skin could be pierced by the most mundane objects. A sharp stick, a pointy rock, a strongly worded letter, probably. And yet here they were, signing up for arena combat like they had something to prove. Humans had been in the gladiatorial circuits for 20 cycles, like I said, and their track record was, well, it existed. That is about the nicest thing I could say. They had won matches, sure, but almost exclusively against each other or against other species in their weight class. Put them up against a heavyweight? A real bruiser from a high-gravity world? The results were predictable and often required significant medical intervention. I pulled up the historical data on my datapad while the fighters took their positions. Humans had a 38% win rate overall in sanctioned matches. Not terrible for a species that evolved chasing antelopes across grasslands instead of, actually fighting predators with teeth and claws. Their best performers usually relied on speed, endurance, and what the analyst called unpredictable tactical flexibility, which was a fancy way of saying they made stuff up as they went along. Maya Torres herself had a decent record. 14 wins, 6 losses. She had never fought above her weight class before, never faced anything remotely like Krelevok. Her previous opponents had been other mid-tier fighters, species with comparable mass and strength. She won those matches through technique, stamina, and apparently an alarming tolerance for pain. The medical reports from her previous fights noted that she had continued fighting with a cracked rib, a partially dislocated shoulder, and what the human doctors called a mild concussion, which still sounded pretty serious to me. Krelevok, on the other hand, had literally never lost. 47 matches, 47 victories. 32 of those were knockouts. 8 were technical submissions when his opponent simply could not continue. The remaining 7 went to judges' decisions, which he won by such wide margins that people suspected the judges were being generous by not calling them earlier. The referee, a neutral Caldronian with 4 eyes and 0 patience, was going through the standard rules. No lethal force, no attacks to the sensory organs. Fight until submission, knockout, or medical stoppage. The betting windows were closing. The crowd was on its feet. My Brolthian neighbor was recording this on 3 different devices, and I thought to myself, this poor woman has no idea what she has gotten herself into. The opening bell chimed, a pure crystalline note that cut through the crowd noise like a blade through butter, and Krelevok moved. For something that massive, he was shockingly fast. His forearms came up in a fighting stance that would make a combat instructor weep with joy. Perfect form, perfect balance, perfect intimidation factor. He advanced across the arena floor with the confidence of someone who had never, not once, doubted the outcome of a fight. Maya, to her credit, did not freeze. She circled left, light on her feet, keeping her distance. Smart. Survival instinct, kicking in. The lizard brain, or whatever humans had in their skulls, screaming at her to run away from the massive predator. Except she could not run away because, force barriers and contractual obligations. Krelevok struck first, a probing jab with his upper right arm, fast as a plasma bolt. Maya slipped it, barely, her head moving just enough to let the fist whistle past her ear. The displacement of air actually moved her hair. The crowd made an appreciative noise. Close calls were always entertaining, but that was just the setup. Krelevok's lower left arm came sweeping in at body level, and this time Maya could not dodge completely. She got her arms up, blocked, and the impact sent her skidding backward 3 full meters. Her feet scraped against the durasteel, leaving small friction marks. The crowd roared. Now that was more like it. That was the kind of mismatch they paid to see. Krelevok pressed his advantage because of course he did. He was a professional, not an idiot. He came forward with a combination that would have overwhelmed most fighters. High jab, low sweep, middle hook, uppercut. 4 arms meant 4 simultaneous angles of attack. It was like fighting a siege engine with multiple targeting systems. Maya backpedaled, weaved, ducked, and blocked where she had to. And here is where it got interesting. In that watching a shuttlecraft try to dodge an asteroid field kind of way. She was actually defending reasonably well. Not good, mind you. She was taking glancing blows that would leave bruises the size of dinner plates, but she was not getting flattened, which was more than most fighters could say after 30 seconds with Krelovok. Look at her go. The Brolthian next to me chuckled, his translator rendering his amusement in perfect galactic standard. Like a minnow avoiding a leviathan. Cute. Really. Wonder how long she lasts. I checked the timer. 2 minutes elapsed. Most betting pools had her going down in the first 5 minutes. She was ahead of schedule for disappointing everyone who bet against her lasting. Krelovok landed a solid hit to her midsection. Not full power, you could tell he was measuring his strikes. Probably did not want to accidentally kill her and deal with the paperwork. But solid enough. Maya doubled over. The air knocked out of her lungs with an oof that the arena microphones picked up and broadcasted to all 60,000 spectators. She stumbled backward, gasping, one hand clutched to her ribs. The crowd was on its feet now, sensing the end. Krelovok advanced, all 4 arms spread wide, ready to finish this. And Maya, still trying to breathe properly, did something that made absolutely no tactical sense whatsoever. She smiled. This little, pained, defiant smile that said she knew something we did not. I should have paid more attention to that smile. That smile was a warning sign. That smile was a preview of the absolute chaos that was about to unfold. But I was an idiot, so I just assumed she was delirious from oxygen deprivation. What happened next occurred so fast that half the crowd missed it in real time and had to watch the replay on the holographic displays. Krelovok lunged forward with all 4 arms extended, going for what the commentators called a cage grab, basically using his multiple limbs to trap an opponent and pummel them into submission. Standard heavyweight finishing move. Brutally effective, perfectly legal. Maya tried to dodge left, but her timing was off, probably because her ribs were screaming at her and her lungs were still remembering how to function. Krelovok's upper left hand clamped onto her right forearm like a mechanical vice. His lower right hand grabbed her shoulder. Then he twisted. The sound was audible even over the crowd noise. A sharp, wet crack that the arena's audio sensors picked up and amplified. It sounded like someone snapping a dry branch, except the branch was human bone. Specifically the radius and ulna of Maya Torres's right forearm. The holographic medical readout lit up red immediately, displaying the fracture in helpful high-definition detail for everyone to see. Clean break, both bones, mid-shaft. The kind of injury that ended fights instantly. The kind of injury that required immediate medical intervention and several weeks of regeneration therapy. The crowd's reaction was split right down the middle. Half of them made that universal sound of sympathetic pain. That collective inhale followed by wincing. You know the sound. The oh that had to hurt sound that transcends species. The other half cheered, because they came here for violence, and violence was what they got. Maya's face went white, actually white, which was impressive considering her natural skin tone. Her eyes went wide, her mouth opened in a silent scream that took a moment to find its voice, and when it did, it was a raw, primal sound that made my spinal ridges stand up. Krelovok released her immediately, stepping back. Even champions had protocols. When a bone breaks that audibly, you stop. You let the medical team assess. You wait for the surrender or the stoppage. The referee was already moving forward, one hand raised to signal the medical team. The crowd was buzzing with a mixture of satisfaction and anticipation. This was it. Fight over. Humans were fragile. Everyone knew it. Now here was proof. Broadcast in real time with full medical graphics. Maya staggered backward, cradling her right arm against her chest. It hung at an angle that arms were definitely not supposed to hang at. The medical scanner drones were already hovering closer, their sensors going into overdrive. The referee reached her. "Fighter Torres, can you continue?" It was a formality. Nobody continued with a broken arm. Nobody. The pain alone would be debilitating. Never mind the structural impossibility of fighting with a compromised limb. Maya looked down at her arm. Then at Krelovok. Then at the referee. And then this woman. This absolutely unhinged human woman said through gritted teeth. "Yes." The referee blinked all four eyes. "I am sorry, what?" I said yes. "I can continue." The arena went dead silent. And I mean dead silent. 60,000 beings holding their collective breath. The medical drones were flashing warnings. The redouts were screaming about bone displacement and nerve damage. The referee looked like he wanted to argue, but the rules were clear. If a fighter said they could continue, and they were conscious and coherent, the fight went on. The referee looked at Maya like she had just declared her intention to breathe vacuum. Fighter Torres, I must inform you that continuing with this injury is medically inadvisable and potentially career-ending. Noted, Maya said, her voice tight with pain but steady. Disturbingly steady. I am not forfeiting. The referee's mandibles clicked in what I recognized as exasperation. He looked to the medical drones which were still broadcasting their warnings in urgent red text. He looked to the officials' box where 3 league representatives were frantically consulting their rule tablets. He looked back at Maya, who was now adjusting her stance, shifting her weight, keeping her broken arm tucked close to her body while raising her left arm into a guard position. One arm. She was going to fight one of the most dangerous heavyweights in the circuit with one functional arm. The Bralthian next to me started laughing again, but it sounded uncertain this time, like he was not quite sure if this was funny or just sad. She has lost her mind, he muttered. The pain has broken her brain. And I was inclined to agree. This was not courage. This was not determination. This was a malfunction of human survival instinct. This was their species' documented tendency toward self-destructive stubbornness taken to an absolutely ludicrous extreme. The referee stepped back, his duty discharged. The medical drones retreated to standby positions. The fight was still on. Krelevak looked genuinely confused. His black eyes blinked slowly, his head tilting in that universal gesture of what am I looking at right now? He was a fighter, not a sadist. He took no pleasure in unnecessary harm. This was supposed to be over. Human, he said, his voice a deep rumble that the translators rendered in galactic standard. This is foolish. Surrender with honor. There is no shame. Maya's response was to spit blood onto the arena floor and raise her left fist higher. Come on then. Oh. Oh no. I knew that tone. I had heard that tone before from humans doing inadvisably dangerous things. That was the tone of someone who had made a decision that logic, reason, and basic self-preservation could not touch. The bell chimed again. Round 2. Krelevak advanced more cautiously this time, clearly uncertain how to handle an opponent who was both severely injured and refusing to quit. Maya circled right, moving clockwise now, keeping her broken arm away from him. She was lighter on her feet somehow, like shedding the use of one arm had made her more mobile, which made no sense. None of this made sense. Krelevak threw a testing jab. Maya slipped it, and countered with a left hook that caught him in the ribs. It was a good hit, technically sound, properly rotated. It also did absolutely nothing to Krelevak's armored hide, except make a dull thudding sound. But she had hit him. One-armed, broken, in obvious pain, and she had landed a counterstrike. The crowd's energy shifted. It was subtle, but I felt it. That buzzing anticipation was changing into something else. Confusion. Maybe. Curiosity. The betting terminals were going haywire as people started hedging their bets, not because they thought she could win, but because they had no idea what was happening anymore. Krelevak's frustration was visible now. He attacked with more force, a combination meant to end this nonsense. Maya could not block properly with one arm, so she did not try. She moved. She ducked under a high strike, rolled away from a low sweep, backpedaled from a charging grab. She was fighting like someone with absolutely nothing to lose, taking risks that no sane fighter would take. And somehow, she was still in this fight. I leaned forward in my seat, my beverage forgotten. The Bralthian had stopped laughing entirely. Around us the crowd was getting louder, more invested. Krelevak landed another body shot. Maya took it, grunted, and immediately countered with an elbow strike to his knee joint. Not enough to hurt him, but enough to make him adjust his stance. She was adapting, learning his patterns, figuring out how to fight a four-armed opponent with only one functional limb. This was not supposed to be possible. This violated every statistical model, every algorithmic prediction, every piece of conventional wisdom about cross-species combat. And yet here we were, watching it happen in real time. By the 7-minute mark, something had fundamentally changed in the arena, and I was not entirely sure what or how or why. Maya was still fighting with one arm. Her right arm was still very much broken, still hanging useless at her side. still causing her obvious agony every time she moved wrong. But she was fighting, not surviving, not desperately defending, actually, actively, aggressively fighting. She had figured out Krelovok's patterns. The way his upper arms telegraphed before his lower arms struck. The slight weight shift he made before committing to a charge. The half-second delay between his combination sequences. She was reading him like he was a technical manual written in large, friendly letters, and she was exploiting every gap she found. A left cross caught Krelovok on the jaw. His head snapped to the side. Not much, but visibly. The crowd gasped. Maya followed up with a knee strike to his midsection, targeting the gaps between his armor plates. Krelovok grunted, actually grunted, and had to step back to reset his guard. Did she just... The Brothian next to me started, then stopped, unable to finish the sentence. Yes, she did. She just made Krelovok the unbreakable backup. The holographic displays were going berserk trying to recalculate probability matrices. The commentators in the press box had gone from their scripted banter to just making confused noises. One of them kept saying, "But that should not be possible," over and over like a broken audio file. Krelovok's confidence, that absolute certainty that had carried him through 47 consecutive victories, was showing cracks. His attacks were getting sloppier, more aggressive, less technical. He was frustrated. You could see it in the way he was overextending his strikes, putting too much force into attacks that Maya was not even there to receive anymore. She was making him angry, and angry fighters made mistakes. Maya ducked under a wild haymaker, and I swear to all the stars in the void she smiled again. That same unhinged smile from earlier. She was enjoying this. This human with her broken arm and her bruised ribs and her complete disregard for medical science was having fun. Another exchange. Krelovok threw a four-armed combination that should have caught her. But Maya dropped low, rolled forward between his legs, came up behind him and kicked the back of his knee with enough force that his leg actually buckled. The crowd lost its collective mind. The sound was deafening. Shock, amazement, disbelief, excitement, all mixed together in a sonic wall that made the atmospheric shield vibrate. Krelovok stumbled forward, caught himself, spun around. His expression had gone from confident to confused, to something that looked suspiciously like concern. He was breathing harder now. Not exhausted, Thraxians had endurance for days, but stressed, mentally stressed. The human section was going absolutely feral. They were chanting her name, Maya, Maya, Maya. Other sections were starting to pick it up. Even species that had never seen a human before were getting caught up in whatever this was. I checked the betting terminals again. The odds had shifted to 30-1. Still heavily in Krelovok's favor. But that was a massive change from 50-1. People were actually putting money on the human now. Not because they thought she would win, but because she had already done the impossible just by still being conscious. 10 minutes elapsed. Maya was still standing. Still fighting. Still refusing to acknowledge that she should have been on a medical shuttle 5 minutes ago. Krelovok charged again, all forearms spread wide. Maya waited, then dropped and swept his leg. He did not go down too much mass, but he staggered. And in that moment of imbalance, Maya struck. A perfect left uppercut, right to his throat, the one spot on a Thraxian's body where the armor plating did not quite connect. Krelovok made a choking sound and stepped back, one hand going to his neck. The impossible was becoming possible, and everyone in that arena could feel it. 12 minutes in, and the arena had transformed into a pressure cooker of anticipation. Every being in the stands was on their feet, appendages raised. Voices merging into one continuous roar that seemed to make the very structure of the Colosseum shake. Krelovok was no longer the composed champion. His movements had lost their precision, replaced by raw aggression fueled by equal parts fury and disbelief. He could not understand how this was happening. Neither could anyone else, for the record, but at least we were not the ones getting hit. Maya's left arm had to be exhausted. Simple biology said so. Human muscles had limits. And she had been fighting at maximum output for 12 straight minutes while dealing with catastrophic pain from her broken arm. She should have been finished. Should have been. Past tense. Conditional. Irrelevant. Krelovok roared. An actual bestial roar that his species used to intimidate prey animals, and launched himself forward with all four arms extended in one final, desperate attempt to end this nightmare. It was not technique anymore. It was not strategy. It was pure overwhelming force meant to crush this stubborn, impossible human into the floor. Maya did not retreat. She stepped forward inside his reach, closer than any sane fighter would get to a Thraxian in full attack mode. Time seemed to slow down, or maybe my brain was just processing everything faster because it could not believe what it was seeing. She ducked under his upper arms. She twisted past his lower right. She pivoted on her left foot with a grace that combat instructors would study for cycles afterward, and then, with her one functional arm, with every remaining bit of strength in her compact human frame, with the kind of precision that only comes from absolute desperation or absolute mastery, she drove her left fist directly into Krelovok's solar plexus. The impact sounded like a hammer hitting a gong. Krelovok's eyes went wide. All the air rushed out of his lungs in one massive exhale. His forearms dropped to his sides. His knees buckled. And then Krelovok, the unbreakable, champion of the heavyweight division, holder of 47 consecutive victories, fell. He went down like a collapsing building, first to his knees, then forward onto his face, his massive body hitting the durasteel with a boom that echoed through the suddenly silent arena. The referee rushed forward, checking Krelovok's condition. The medical drones swarmed. The holographic displays flashed red, then yellow, then green. Alive. Conscious, but unable to continue. The referee raised his hand, the signal clear and unmistakable. Maya Torres had won. For exactly 2 seconds the arena was absolutely silent. 60,000 beings holding their breath in perfect synchronized shock. Then the place exploded. The noise was indescribable. People were screaming, cheering, throwing things, fainting, experiencing what I can only describe as collective psychotic breaks from reality. The Brothian next to me was crying. Crying. His merchandise drink had spilled all over both of us, and neither of us noticed or cared. In the center of the arena, Maya stood over her fallen opponent, cradling her broken arm, swaying slightly on her feet, and smiling. Still smiling. The medical teams descended on the arena floor like a coordinated swarm. 3 separate teams, actually. One for Krelovok, who was being helped to his feet by 4 assistants and looking like someone had just explained quantum physics to him in interpretive dance. One for Maya, who was finally, allowing herself to acknowledge that her arm was catastrophically broken. And one team just standing by in case anyone in the crowd had a medical emergency from sheer emotional overload. Maya's knees buckled the moment the adrenaline started wearing off. 2 medics caught her before she hit the floor, carefully supporting her broken arm while scanning her for additional injuries. The readout was not pretty. Fractured arm, obviously, 3 cracked ribs, severe bruising across 70% of her body, mild concussion, dehydration, muscle tears in her left shoulder from overcompensation. The list went on. The human section had breached the security barriers and was flooding toward the arena floor. Security did not even try to stop them. What were they going to do? Arrest an entire species section? The humans were crying, laughing, screaming, hugging each other, and generally acting like their champion had just saved the galaxy from extinction rather than won a sporting match. The betting booths were in absolute chaos. Computers were overheating, trying to calculate payouts. Several bookmakers had simply fainted. The few people who had actually bet on Maya Torres at 50-to-1 odds were about to become very, very wealthy. One Zenthari trader was just standing in front of his terminal staring at his winning ticket, repeating, "I was joking, I was joking, I was joking, I was joking," over and over. The replay screens were showing the final punch from 17 different angles. Analysts were already dissecting it frame by frame. The holographic medical display showed exactly how the strike had disrupted Krelovok's breathing pattern and triggered a temporary systemic shutdown. It was, according to the experts appearing on instant commentary feeds, a perfect shot. 1 in a million, impossible to replicate. The kind of thing that should not work, except it absolutely did. So here is what I learned at rotation in the Grand Coliseum of Thykar Prime. Watching a 73-kilogram human defeat a 400-kilogram champion with 1 functional arm and apparently 0 survival instinct. Humans are not the strongest species. They are not the fastest. They are not the most durable, the most intelligent, or the most naturally equipped for combat. Their bones break, their skin tears, their organs fail under stress that most species would consider mild inconvenience. But there is something in their psychological makeup, some glitch in their evolutionary programming, that makes them completely and utterly unable to recognize when they are beaten. They see impossible odds, and interpret that as a personal challenge. They experience pain that would incapacitate other species and treat it like background noise. They break bones and keep fighting because, apparently, bones are optional. The Galactic Coalition had been treating humans like a novelty act for 20 cycles. Cute little mammals who wanted to play Gladiator with the big kids. They had been wrong. Catastrophically, hilariously, expensively wrong. Maya Torres was loaded onto a medical shuttle, her broken arm already in a regeneration cast, her face displaying what humans call a morphine smile. The crowd was still chanting her name. Krelvak was receiving treatment for his bruised ego along with his bruised everything else. And me? I was recalculating every assumption I had ever made about humanity. Because if they could do this in an arena, what else were they capable of? That thought, my friends, kept me awake for many rotations afterward. It still does. Never, and I mean never, underestimate a human who smiles when they should be screaming. That smile means they know something you do not. And by the time you figure out what it is, you are already on the ground wondering what just happened. The hurricane named Maya Torres taught us that lesson. The galaxy would be wise to remember it.